Oh, wait, I think that's it. I think we're live now. All right, great. It took me a second. Or like 5. Anyway, oh, there's Talia. Okay, she's back. All right. So, welcome, friends, family, internet dwellers. My name is no, mushroom. My name is Kier, Alexis, and this is our book club, which may also be known as a book cult, which we haven't really decided on a name yet, but that's okay. Let's introduce ourselves and jump right into this. I know that there are a couple people in the chat. Kirsten, if you are in the chat already, just say hello so that we know you're there. Kirsten is likely to be joining us from the chat today. And yeah, why don't we start? We'll start with the lower right-hand corner. That's you, Talia.
Oh, hi, I'm Talia Ishbari. Talia Ishbari is my writing name. I am from Trinidad and Tobago. I'm a pre-published author. And well, happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there, moms, stepmoms, aunt, grandmoms, teachers, social workers, anyone out there protecting kids. Happy Mother's Day to you guys.
Thank you. You, Gabriella.
I'm Gabriella Buva. I'm calling in from Texas. Just got off a long call with my mom because it's Mother's Day. So it's going to be like a day on screens, I think. Making all the calls.
Sounds legit. Bree.
Hi, I'm Bree from Brooklyn, New York. Happy Mother's Day to everybody. Yeah, and I'm excited to talk about books today. Oh, and then my guest star today.
Echo, right?
Echo. It's Echo, yeah.
Yeah. That's very.
So she'll be popping in and out.
Very appropriate.
Yeah, so she's allowed to pop. She's allowed to pop in and out today.
Right. So I'm Kara Alexi. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch now, welcome. I think that's like all the places that this thing is broadcast, right? That sounds about right. I'm a writer, living, working, breathing, writing in Trinidad and Tobago, where I was born and raised. And I'm very excited today to talk about 15 Dogs, which is actually written by someone who I believe is Trinidadian born, Trinidadian Canadian, something like that, Andre Alexis. There are 3 other members of this book club. One, Shayna, is not here because she's engaged with Mother's Day obligations. Kirsten, I think, is joining us from the chat at some point because she also has Mother's Day /work obligations. And I have no idea what's going on with Seidel because I've not heard from her in a little while. But all are we brown, which means that all we understand the concept of Caribbean /brown people time. And I can't be vexed. I can't be vexed at that at all. So here we are. I want us, now this was Kirsten's book, and oh, hi, Kat. Okay, let's take the keyboard off. This is Mushroom. Say hello. Say hello to my little friend.
Hi, Mushy.
Hello.
Right. This was a really interesting read. Kirsten is not here to read the little like book blurb for this book herself. I'm going to take it upon myself to do that for her today. So this is 15 Dogs by Andrea Alexis. And it's the blurb goes, "I wonder," said Hermes, "what would it be like if animals had human intelligence?" "I'll wager a year's servitude," answered Apollo, "that animals, any animal you like, would be even more unhappy than humans are if they were given human intelligence." And so it begins. A bet between the gods Hermes and Apollo leads them to grant human consciousness and a language to a group of dogs overnighting at a Toronto veterinary clinic. Suddenly capable of more complex thought, the pack is torn between those who resist the new ways of thinking, preferring the old dog ways, and those who embrace the change. The gods watch from above as the dogs venture into their newly unfamiliar world, as they become divided among themselves, as each struggles with new thoughts and feelings. Wily Benjy moves from home to home, prince becomes a poet, and Majnoun forges a relationship with a kind couple that stops even the fates in their tracks. Andre Alexis's contemporary take on the apologue, it offers an utterly compelling and affecting look at the beauty and perils of human consciousness. By turns meditative and devastating, charming and strange, 15 Dogs shows you can teach an old genre new tricks. Well, that's clever. So who wants to go first? Because one of you guys gotta go first. My breakfast has arrived.
Gabby, you want to go first? We kind of missed you last week.
Sure, I can go first.
That's what I was thinking too. Good call. Good call, Talia.
It's a stall tactic.
I didn't like this book.
Good. Tell us more.
Yeah.
I'm picky about animal books. First of all, I need animal books to have not bad things happen to animals. Because I am weak and made of soft stuff. So the entire premise of the book was really not for me. Yeah. I could see that it was a clever thing that they were doing, and there was a lot of interesting language things that were going on. And I was like, this is clearly in the literary genre.
Yeah.
And there are sad dogs. And I'm sad.
Yeah. I am inclined to agree with that. I mean, I don't think that I wouldn't go so far as to be like, I didn't like this book, but I didn't love it. Yeah. Like, it's one of those books where I don't fucking hate it, but I'm not gonna be like, oh my god, you gotta read this book and like weave it in.
It has a place. It has a very specific place, I think.
Yeah, it has a place. But I also feel like, gosh, I don't know. It was kind of a narrative of, and it's interesting that the little blurb is like it's inspirational or devastating or whatever, like different parts. But for me, I feel like the entire thing was just kind of like a narrative on humans living their lives based on like misery and violence. Does anybody else feel like that was?
So to me, it felt like a lot of telling. It was just like you said, like a narrative, like one long stream of consciousness. Yeah. Of just, but yeah, it was just painting a picture, like you said, of humanity through dogs. But I think at the very end, there was one thing that kind of stood out, and it was that maybe happiness doesn't come from language or awareness, but that happiness comes from shared experience and understanding. And that maybe a lot of humanity's problems described through these dogs is lack of understanding or lack of empathy. So that's the one thing that I kind of took away from it. But it kind of took me back to like reading Animal Farm in high school, minus government. Instead of a government satire, it was, sort of what makes us human and what brings happiness. So it was an interesting read.
Yeah. What about you, Talia?
They said in the blurb that it's this examination of humanity when it felt like it was a case study on toxic masculinity.
Ooh, tell me more.
It was the obsession with hierarchy from a couple of the dogs in particular, and for starters, let me just say I did not like this book, but I recognize that a lot of it was it's me problems. I would still rate this book very highly. Like I would give it like 4. Like it's an easy 4.5 out of 5. I hope the author doesn't attack me for that. But
we're not gonna get into Twitter tea right now, okay?
We're not gonna get into Twitter tea.
Let's focus.
Benji's obsession with his position in the hierarchy where he says, okay, well, I'm the leader here, I'm the alpha here. That
Benji or Atticus?
Atticus.
Atticus.
I think. Yeah.
Benji to me, and tell me if you guys agree.
Benji to me, in terms of the hierarchy that we are aware of, he was an incel.
Are you sure you're talking about Benji?
I saw Benji as Littlefinger from Game of Thrones, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
He wiggled his way in, said like what he had to say.
He was greasing whatever wheels he needed to be greased to like get what he wanted.
To get ahead. Yes, I did make that association, but I just felt like things weren't going his way, and he's gonna blame that on someone else. Like he willingly returned it to the pack, and then and when he willingly returned it to the pack because he wanted to be a part of that hierarchy, he wanted to be part of the group. He did not want to like, okay, go ahead and like some of the others and forge new. Everything was someone else's fault, and it literally led to his own demise because he could have gone with the couple, but he didn't. So it just felt like, oh, the things are not going my way, and it's someone else.
Didn't they leave him behind?
They tried to get. They called him. They called him. They tried calling him.
Yeah.
They tried getting him out, but he figured that he should not. He said that he should not take orders from them because he was their master and not the other way around. And that's what I meant. Like
that's right.
That's right. Yeah. I think that there are a lot of it is interesting to me that you've associated that with like a narrative of toxic masculinity, because I can see it, but I don't necessarily see it in Benji, though I think you're right. Like it's advanced in Benji in that way. But I definitely see it in like the violence of like Atticus and frickin' Frack. And that's that was
in Majnoun a little bit too.
In Majnoun a little bit too, but Majnoun was not as it wasn't as overt in that character.
He chose to agree to disagree with his owner that like your husband's the leader.
Yeah.
Fine, you want to believe that you're not, but you are.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just have this whole thing was kind of like a mind screw, right? Like this. But that's what literary fiction is for. That's kind of what we seek to get out of it, what we want from it. I will also say that like the very early murder or like decision to murder.
Didn't I text you? I was like,
yes. God, Brie texted me and I was just like,
that was the first. I had no idea that was the first of many. I was like, what kind of book am I reading? They killed the 2 girl dogs. And I'm like, I love the Chihuahua. She's gone. Oh, here's my Chihuahua.
Oh.
Yeah, it was the one of many murders. I was like, oh, this is not a kid's book.
No. Nope. Nope.
I was kind of upset with how all of the women and the female dogs in the book got like the short end of the stick the whole time, and it just kept getting worse. And I was like,
except for like Rosie
that did feel very Greek tragedy. Like it felt within the genre of a Greek tragedy. Women always get the short end of the stick.
It's true. So. Also within the genre of patriarchal society.
We went there.
So, kind of the theme of our book club for the last 3 books.
Yeah, I mean, like to be fair though, I can't imagine like when you stick like a bunch of women of color who are highly opinionated and like very all about their own like their in their field and their this like you're going to get, I think, narratives on the patriarchy and why it's bullshit. Like that's gonna happen. So I'm not surprised. I feel like we're going to see that in everything.
Yeah.
and I don't necessarily mean that I think we're going to see that in everything because it is in everything, but also because it is in everything, right? Like I think that because so much of the work that we read, so much of the work that we produce as creators and as writers, it is, even if it's in a fantasy world, we have to have a baseline that we build it from. And that baseline is inevitably going to be our own world, right? It's always going to be what we know and what we understand. And so if we are talking about some kind of oppressive regime, we're going to look at the patriarchy and colonialism as our models for how that's done. And that's how it's going to get into our fantasy. And so I don't know that it's necessarily a matter that we see it everywhere, or that because it, inevitably all fantasy is based on reality, we do see it everywhere because it's there. And because we're so like hyper aware of everything else, that's how we kind of engage with material. But that's a bit of a tangent. So who was your favorite character? I think this is really a thing we all have to think of. Like sometimes, or for the last 2 books, we jumped in here and we were all like, "Oh my god, my feelings!" And right now, all of us are just like, "This book traumatized."
We got gut punched. We got gut punched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least I'm glad. I got it on audiobook, so I was able to like do dishes or something, like, so I wasn't like sitting idly. Because if I was just sitting there reading it, I'd be like, oh.
Yeah, and I mean it was a short. The last book we read too. Oh, sorry, you go.
Was short.
Yeah.
No. As coming back to that was my experience, because I was reading it, a digital copy, and I'm like, and my little one, the 3-year-old, he's not able to read that well, and I'm like, no, you can't read this. You can't read. You're now learning your phonics, but don't. I did not like that the very few female dogs were written off very quickly, and they very rarely got their own point of view chapters. But I'm guessing or theorizing that the author spoke from his own experiences, because there was recently online there was this whole thing about, there's a new line in terms of male hierarchy. You have the alphas, you have the betas, and you have the omegas, and so on. And they had this new thing, the sigmas, who are not obsessed with hierarchy, from men who are considering themselves sigmas. And there was this obsession, and I went back to that, and those, it's okay, and those online discussions about this obsession with hierarchy and men deciding who they are, and considering another level. They're seeing this hierarchy, and this doesn't fit them, but they're not that, and they don't want to be associated with that, and so therefore it's someone else's fault. And that is what I got when I read this book, and I am like, oh yeah, this is like a highfalutin version of online discussions between men.
Highfalutin version. I love it.
Highfalutin.
The literary genre.
Yeah. The literary genre really messes with me. Bree, you've got things to say. Tell me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as far as it being the literary genre, like that's not a genre that we typically read outside of high school and college. So in a way, it was kind of nice, because I was like, oh, okay, I probably enjoyed it more now than I would have been reading it in high school. Because now, we love to learn. We're very curious. In high school, it was not as much. But anyway, so I enjoyed that aspect of like feeling like, okay, I'm in school again. We're going to read this. We're going to discuss it. But is it a book I would have reached for every day to entertain myself? Probably not. So I kind of agree with you, Talia, that would I recommend it? Sure. I think it is a vivid painting and a vivid, the writing was very beautiful. While it was narrative and telling, it was still it was poetic. So there were some very poetic moments that I was like, oh, that was pretty, But I think it has a time and a place, and it's definitely a gut puncher. Yeah, and as far as my favorite character, the Chihuahua.
Oh,
she didn't get enough of a role.
I was gonna say she didn't even last long. Oh man,
she wrote on the back of the Great Dane. I'm just like, I just loved it. I loved it.
What about Prince? Was nobody into Prince?
I loved the Prince.
Dog?
I loved Prince.
Yeah,
he was the poet dog. Yeah,
the poet dog. How do we feel about was there? Because I feel like the clearest character arc was actually Majnoun.
Yeah.
he was like the main character if there was to be a main character, right?
Yeah.
How
He
did
got
you
the
guys
most screen time.
Yes, he got the most screen time. Well, I
He
guess
got
by
the most
default,
screen
that's our
time.
main character.
He got the most screen time, and it illustrated the longest lasting bond. A lot of dogs went from owner to owner, from dog to dog, and he definitely kept the longest relationship with Nira up until her demise.
Right.
Which, oh, what was up with that? Okay, so now the fates are pushed to cut a line, and they're just like, okay, fine, we're just gonna cut it. They cut the two wrong.
Greek
I have
tragedy.
to pause it.
Yeah,
She didn't cut the wrong one. She cut who she
I had
wanted
to
to
pause
cut.
it for a minute. I had to pause it. I was like, oh, they're not coming home, and he doesn't understand.
I liked that scene. I liked that scene when she did it. I loved it. It was an FU. It's like, well, F you, God, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I'm in my house. You can't do what I could do. You know? Or as we say in Trini parlance, which I think is appropriate as the author is, you know, of Trini extraction.
They were sassy.
You?
They were sassy.
I loved
Who is
her.
you?
Who is you?
Absolutely. I did think the gods were dicks, but like that's not new. That's not new,
that's what they
especially
have.
for the
That's
Greek
not new.
gods, right? The gods were pretty shit. Gosh.
Yeah.
Something that really struck me fairly early on too is that desire for pack. Like that desire for pack, like Benjy, the first time Benjy goes back to the pack, and Dougie goes back to the pack. Well, we're dogs. That's where we belong. This is where we need to be with others like us, right? These humans don't understand us, kind of thing. And even Majnoun kind of like had feelings around that and the necessity of the pack, but he was more like, I don't need the dog pack. I just need my pack, which is Nira and Negan, right? Yeah. And I felt like that was like another thing that brought home the idea of this kind of just kind of examination or narrative around people and what we like as people and what we need or what we seek as human beings. I don't know what's happening, Natalia. Oh, you're back.
I'm back. Oh, so that was me. Okay.
Oh, what did you just like see somebody flash away and come back?
I saw everybody flash, and I'm like, what's going on with your internet?
Oh, no, that was you, babe. That's okay. You're back, and that's what matters.
Is everybody okay? How was everyone's internet? Yeah, sorry, I had a moment.
No, you're good. But yeah, so like I felt like all of that kind of brings it back to the idea of it being an examination of what it means to be human, because I do feel like that is also a very human thing, is that we're always looking for our people, we're always looking for our pack, we're always looking for a place to belong and a group that understands us, and we're always looking for those things. And it was interesting that the dogs were the same, right? The dogs wanted connection, they wanted structure, they wanted something they understood. And that was really interesting to me, that kind of contrast between Majnoun and then how the other dogs engage with that lack or not lack of social group, I guess.
So I guess one question I can kind of throw at the group is, what did we think about the dichotomy in reactions to the change? What I mean is how Atticus's group rejected the change, said we're going to be old dogs. Anybody who, is going to get exiled, killed, versus Prince Majnoun, who recognized the change and were not scared of it, but rather embraced it and explored it.
Yeah, that was something else that I was thinking of. But I've been blabbing, so somebody else speak for 2 minutes. How do you guys feel about the question that Breeze just put forward?
I felt like it's like the old generations versus the newer of generations. And while she was talking, I remembered Piers Morgan ragging on Daniel Craig for baby wearing. And it was this example of Piers Morgan, yeah.
I don't know who that is, but okay, I know who Daniel Craig is.
He was like, Yeah, like nobody with that. But he was ragging on literal James Bond
Right.
for baby wearing. And when I first saw the image, I was like, oh my God, I love this because he is this big, strong man. We can see that he can be dangerous and all these sorts of things. And look at him being the protector of this little baby. And like men baby wearing is like, I love it so much. And I saw this whole rejection of anything new to the point of killing another dog. And I just immediately flashed to that, and it made this weird connection in my brain. And it's like, you have the opportunity to do something different. He could have led his pack to greatness. He could have had discussions with Prince, and he could have had discussions with Majnoun, and they could have had their own little, intellectual circle, and this didn't happen. Because he was obsessed with the way things were and not with the way things could be, or, hey, things have changed for us. Let's see how we can make this change most comfortable for us. And I saw that. And you were talking about, how this thing with the pack and so on. And it's like, what I particularly loved about this book, because, again, this book has a lot of elements I didn't like. One of the elements that I really, really liked was that this was found family. But not all found families are going to be good. This was a found family that was toxic AF.
Yes. That's actually
and it's like,
a really
this is how children fall into bad company.
Yeah.
And I think and it's back. Like, because your friends are found family. Care's my family. No, like care's my family, because I've and when you listen to us talk, be like, but you only met face to face and had like a real conversation. At the end,
okay, so I'm gonna try to pick up
of
Nicola's
2019.
narrative. Yes, at the end of 2019. Talia, I think I'd like use your real name. Talia.
And it's like, no, but Claire's my family, right? Because she
I don't know if she's even hearing us.
Which is unfortunate, because I feel like she's on a roll.
Yeah. There's a point being made here.
I know, right? I'm honestly just trying to get her to stop long enough for like it to unstick so we can hear everything at once. There! Oh, Talia, you're back.
Okay.
You just like you froze in like goddess pose. You froze in like goddess pose for like the last 2 minutes, and we're all just like, and your voice was coming in kind of choppy. So we were hearing your story in pieces.
One does.
Oh, I know she's frozen again. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't.
Come out and switch. So just a moment, okay? I'm gonna come out and come back.
Yes, okay, that's fine. In the meantime, let me. I'm gonna pick up a little bit with what Talia was saying, because I actually think that's a really good point that we don't often address, and that I don't see often in books, in the books that I read, because I love myself a found family trope. Okay, found family is my thing. Like Talia was saying, Talia's my family, and you would never fucking know that I only know Talia not even 2 years now, right? I saw Talia and met Talia and spoke to Talia face to face the first time at like the tail end of 2019, just before all the lockdown tralala from the Panini, right? And but we are. We're Talia to say, Talia does tell me how my children go in when she's talking about her sons, right? And that I think that's such a beautiful, lovely thing. And I've been so fortunate to have found family that is healthy for me, that's supportive, that cares. But we don't always get that. Sometimes your found family is trash. And
it reminded me a bit of a crabs in a bucket situation.
Yes.
because some of the dogs, they wanted to stay in the bucket, and they were going to drag anyone back into the bucket or kill them if they wanted out. And that's a feeling that I get a lot interacting in some toxic circles.
Well, and it was really unfortunate because the alpha was the one who was going to either you join me or you die.
Yeah.
And that's a really scary thought. And I think maybe not to get political, but we kind of saw a little bit of that in America.
Absolutely.
Where some of us more educated people are like, this is not okay. This is not okay. But what the hell can we do?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I think that was really similar here too, is that, and educated, not necessarily in the sense of like book educated, but like understanding, like experientially, like an experience kind of educated. Like you have the experience to identify red flags, and you have the experience to identify what's good for you and what's not good for you, and you know what is or isn't like doing the good things. And I think that's, oh man, and that just brings me back to the idea that this book is just a narrative on how shitty human beings are.
And how important empathy, and as the Gen Zers would say, being woke, like just being emotionally empathetic to the people around us. So thanks for clarifying what I meant, because I did mean more like that, but just understanding that we are one group of people, one species, the human species, and that sometimes the loudest voices and the voices that are the most far-reaching are not necessarily
the healthy ones.
The healthy ones, yes, thank you.
Yeah, and something I think, this is the same thing that I think you had pointed out, and you'd asked this question, Bree, is about that dichotomy between embracing the new and like rejecting it and trying to stick with the old. Something I thought was really interesting is that even those who were trying to stick to the old ways of being a dog, even they recognized, like they denied it, but it was recognized that they weren't really being dogs. Like even the language that they spoke wasn't really the language of when they were dogs. Even the behavior. You know what it reminded me of? Tell me.
It reminded me of, remember Tropic Thunder, Robert Downey Jr. He's playing like pretending to be, but then pretending to be, but then it's like all these layers of acting. And it was kind of like that. We're pretending to be dogs, but we're intelligent, but we're going to speak like dogs. But now we're speaking something that dogs don't even speak, but we're still pretending to be dogs. So it was just this. And like you said, in the end, they weren't even living as dogs, because even Atticus was going to the river with Rosie. I think her name was Rosie. And like talking in the talking language. It's like, so it just goes to show that even the ones who are speaking the loudest and telling you to live the old ways are still in the corner doing the new ways. And I could give so many examples of that, but like not to get political.
Yeah, no, but you're right though. And that's actually a fantastic, and we said earlier that like it was a lot like Animal Farm without the politics. But you can't take politics out of our sociocultural upbringing, can you? Because that's where it comes from, right? And that was, ugh. But I think it says a lot about this book and how it made us feel, and like what this book was like, that I feel like a lot of the themes and a lot of the gut punching from the Marrow Thieves, we were still so like crazy passionate and really talkative about that. And for this one, it's not that these themes are less gut punchy. It's not that these themes are less or different in any way, but we have a much quieter, we're talking about that in a much quieter way. Like our whole vibe is just kind of like this fucking shit.
I didn't feel uplifted by it in any way, whereas I felt like the Marrow Thieves, there was an uplifting feeling to it, that like even if we're suffering, we're going to get somewhere better through this, and we're working together as a community to get there. And in this one, they were just horribly tearing each other apart to never get there as a community, and I was just like,
yeah,
and they just died.
And in the end, they died already.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, it was we are a bunch of women, and like we're talking, and I'm wondering, I wonder if we gave like a book club ran by men this book, how would they respond to it? Like, get Brandon in here. What does he have to say about this book? Like, what would he?
I don't think he's read it. but I'm going to message him.
Yeah, like I want to hear what I want to hear what a bunch of men have to say. I want them to examine this thing critically and hear what they have to say. And I think it's going to be very telling the kind of responses they come up with.
I'm gonna
I don't
ask
know
him.
if I want any of the men that I know to read this book and tell me what they think of it, because I'm going to judge them incredibly hard.
It's true.
I judge
It's
them
Like how much do you value your current relationship?
Precisely.
Basically.
I don't need that. No, thank you.
But there's definitely an element of, yes, this is because it's like a condensed sociocultural evolution of man, right?
Yes.
It's like a tightly condensed version of it, where, you know, instead of intelligence developing over time and all of this like mass genocide happening over time, yeah, it just all
One day
happens
in the
like at
park.
once. It's just all like,
Within a couple of weeks.
yeah, it just happens. Ta-da.
It almost felt like it tried to give you a happy ending, but it's still, everybody died unhappy. And then you had like 1 second of happy, and it's just like, it didn't help. You're like, I'm still, ugh.
So that 1 second, who won? Apollo won, right?
He lost. All of them died unhappy, but I guess one of them I forgot who, felt sorry, gave him back a couple of minutes of his life so that he could die happy. But he still lost and had to give servitude.
Yeah. So it was Hermes who loses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because I'm trying to remember who made the bet that they would be unhappy. And that's Apollo. Apollo was the one, right? So Apollo wins. And that just keeps bringing me back to this idea that it's just this whole narrative of people are trash and we live our lives based on misery because we do. Like the Matrix had a really similar kind of idea too, right? Is that we judge our lives, we create our standards, you know, we're not based on happiness or contentment or security or safety, but based on misery. We have our whole system that is controlled and determined by who is more miserable than who, right? And by default, if you're the least miserable, then you're happy. And that's kind of how it goes. And I kind of feel like this book did illustrate that same idea that you can't be happy. Happiness isn't a thing. You won't die happy because you're always going to die alone. And you're always going to engage in with things that are temporary. Any happiness is transient, right? There is no like permanent joy here in the world. And you know, this is why I don't fucking read literary fiction. Because I don't want that truth. I don't want that truth. I want the nice, beautiful, commercial lie of happiness.
That's why we write fantasy. We write good fantasy where, you know, women are listened to the first time. Or, you know.
The hero's journey. We like the hero's journey.
We like the hero's journey. I mean, in its own way, though, I do think that a lot of these dogs did engage in the hero's journey. Majnoun definitely, I think he engaged in the hero's journey, right? He was thrust into this new world. He had to make all of these adaptations, and at the end, he was changed. He was changed, and he was accepting and learning like his new role, and you know, and maybe the book, depending on where you've decided that like final change comes in, maybe the book keeps going a little past his conclusion, like his. You know, when he comes back to the top of the circle, but I think that he did it. I think that he definitely had a hero's journey. Yeah. It's maybe not one that we enjoyed in the way we enjoy these others.
I think he could have got.
You normally get them.
Sorry.
So Talia, then.
Oh no, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I glitched and I didn't realize someone was speaking. So again, going back to Atticus's journey, I think he could have gotten a little bit more screen time just to kind of explore that positive arc to the end, because I hated him fully 100% when he started with all of these, you know, with this brutal dictatorship that he was running. And then coming to the end, I'm seeing him examining his own actions and it's like, you know, I used to have some pretty trash opinions, and I have changed, but I've changed over time. And I would have liked to have seen that in him. And there's an opportunity to validate, okay, you need to give people the opportunity to change, which is what Atticus did, which is what a lot of people do. And it would have been nice to see that, because people don't change in 2 pages like he did. Like about 5 pages could have done it, and it would not have padded. I'm being facetious.
We know.
I did not enjoy this book, and it's showing a little too much. I could have
The
enjoyed it. I
redemption
think
wasn't.
I didn't. Yeah, it didn't
Earned?
feel. Yes, it didn't feel earned, and it could have been, because I saw it. I saw that it could have. I see that it was earned because he did engage in that.
He
internal.
engaged in introspection, but we didn't really.
We didn't
There
get
was
to
no
enjoy
payoff.
it. Yeah,
There was
we
no
didn't get
payoff
to
for the
enjoy
reader.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, I think
Yeah,
I do feel. Brie.
Yeah.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I listened to a whole seminar on that subject, on payoffs and earned payoffs, and when they don't feel earned, they fall flat, like you're describing, Talia. Where it's like, okay, cool, but it felt to me, Atticus just felt sleazy even at the end.
Yeah. Benjy was the sleaziest, though.
Absolutely.
There was no pupper more sleazy than Benjy. He was a greasy one. Yeah. But I'm leaning towards agreement with these. Like, I really think that Atticus wasn't. Also, I feel like there was definitely a political choice in naming him Atticus. Did nobody else feel that way?
Atticus Finch? You were thinking that way, or?
Yeah, I mean, that's the most famous Atticus that I know.
Right, yeah.
Right? To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah, I was curious about why they named him that.
I feel like quite a few of the names were.
There was a Greek politician, Atticus, though, that it
Yes.
might have been referencing.
Yes, I wasn't sure about that, but I mean, Athena, I think, was also a symbolic name. A lot of the names were not, maybe not all, I don't know, but I felt like the names were fairly purposeful and fairly like chosen with specificity and chosen with purpose, like Atticus and Athena. Especially when Athena was one of the first to
die. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a symbolic thing, right? Because if Athena is the contemporary of Apollo and Hermes and represents all the things Athena is supposed to represent, like wisdom and like craft and so on. Athena being like the first one to go, one of the first ones to go, is really symbolic, and I think it's kind of stands. And Atticus is who, Atticus and Frickin' Frack and Max, who conspired. And I love that they were referred to as the conspirators as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they're a group. And all of that comes back to the whole idea of them not really being, not really being dogs anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but also not wanting to embrace the fact that they just weren't dogs anymore, that they were something else and something new. And yes, Atticus's freaking hypocrisy just freaking Frack were dumb though.
Frickin' Frack were what?
They were like
Henchmen.
They were like Alice in Wonderland. What are the two?
Oh yeah, what are they called?
Tweedledum and Tweedledee.
Yeah, those.
Yeah, they didn't really.
Or Flotsam and Jetsam in Little Mermaid. I think it's a kind of a trope.
Yeah. But that's exactly what Gabriella is saying, is that they're henchmen. They're not there to like engage with the story. They're just there to carry out tasks. Yeah, they're there to exactly. They're just muscle.
Yeah.
But that's also kind of a narrative on the like wider population who supports the things that like folks like Atticus do and say, and
without
Atticus is like going
through.
Yeah, without thinking. It's like, oh, this brings me momentary pleasure, and they just go for it. They just go for that moment of enjoyment, that moment of satisfaction, right? And then Atticus is behind their back doing all the things he told them they can't do, while they are struggling and striving on that path to just
like my palms are getting sweaty just thinking about it. I'm like, I could think of so many examples that have made me so angry the past couple years.
Religion.
So
Sorry.
this book was triggering.
It was.
Triggered.
It was.
yeah.
It was. But Atticus reminds me of those pastors that preach sexual purity and then get caught in a sex scandal. And I'm like, I know this story. I know this story. The very thing you're condemning, you know. Sorry,
I need a stress ball right now. Where's the stress ball?
Yeah. I got a cat over there. I'll just pet her when the time comes.
I
yes.
have a blanket like over there. But when I get it.
There's a part of me that just wants to like put Mushroom on camera for the rest of it, so that everybody has like a little dose of calm with a little like.
So are we all
nose.
taking like warm baths after this?
Probably.
I am gonna hug my children so extra hard.
Yeah. Gabriella, you've been, I think, the quietest. Oh, hey, Shayna's in the chat. So, I missed a message from Brendan. When we were talking earlier about men reading it and what their opinion is and all that, Brendan said, I'm not sure there's anything I can add to the conversation as someone who hasn't read the book, sadly. Babe, we're going to fix that. I'm going to lend you the book. You're going to have to read it because I need to know. I need to know how you feel. Okay? And then Shayna's here. She says, hi, ladies. Couldn't agree more with your thoughts. Yeah, so Shayna told me just before, when she messaged me to say that she couldn't come today after all because she got caught up with family stuff. Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, folks. She says, I didn't finish this book. I put it down in the laugh shaft and gave my dog a bath instead. This is actually a really vital piece of information. Because I remember Shayna also telling me that she looks at her dogs differently now. She kind of looks at them side-eyed, like sideways.
Oh my God! I forgot something.
Tell me.
When Majnoun starts showing that he does not like being petted all the effing time, and it's like Echo's happy. Echo's exactly where she wants to be. Right? The internet be damned. But there are dogs, there are animals, there are pets that, they will show you like, no, don't. And people will be like, no, come here. And it's like that with children. And it's like, and people are asking, Nira, can I pet your dog? And she's like, no, I'll ask him. And even though like our animals have not been gifted with this human consciousness, you can still I have friends with pets. I can't have pets here, but I have friends with pets, and their pets will come to me, right? And I expect the same of and it goes back to that concept of consent and what consent means. And even though Majnoun was not communicating with the other people in the park who wanted to pet him verbally, he was still able to show, no, I don't want to be petted. And there were people that he would allow to pet him. And yeah, it was just this, like, I remember that, and it was just, I could talk forever on this topic. So
that incident though
was beautiful.
That incident though brings up something else, is that the only people he would consent to pet him were the people who were not belittling or otherwise acting dominant or domineering over Nira. Yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
So there was still the hierarchy going on.
Yeah. And I thought that was really interesting because it's also like a way of it's kind of like it was kind of his way of validating his pack, if that makes sense. That's what it felt. That's kind of what it felt like to me. Yeah. Brendan says that if he's honest, this sounds precisely like the kind of book he would ever read.
I wouldn't have read it if it wasn't for book club.
I would not have read it if it wasn't for book club. This I honestly started this book. I got I don't know, maybe 10 pages in, and I was like, do I really want to fucking finish this? And then I had to go, no, it's my duty. Everyone else is going to finish it, or at least try to finish it. I should at least
It was easier for me to finish this book because, well, you know why.
Yeah.
I've read worse, and I finished worse. I got 3/4 way through Finnegan's Wake, so I do have a bit of, literary masochism in me.
Oh.
There's a site called Did the Dog Die? So what they do is they review movies, and they let you know whether or not, the dog lives or dies in it. And I'm thinking, we cannot let them find this book. They cannot make this book into a movie because they will need some therapy. Send them some weighted blankets and some fuzzies.
It's so true.
Gabby.
Hi, I got a hot.
Yes.
My mom's pinging me, so.
Oh, it's cool. It's Mother's Day. We expected that folks would have to be jumping in and out or not here at all today. But thanks for joining us, and we'll very excitedly talk about our next book. But
Definitely.
yeah, see ya.
Yeah. Bye.
So Shay is also saying it's a great thought experiment. I would recommend this book to philosophy students. And she also mentions that I have a friend who is an existentialist, and I'm sending him my copy. It's true. She also says it sounds like a movie meant for a film festival.
Yeah.
I don't think so, because if I were at a film festival, people get high at film festivals, just like they get high at music festivals, and this would not be a good film to watch high.
Yeah, you'd cry.
What drug would you recommend? What drug?
None.
Did you guys see none? I don't think any could counteract it, even MDMA. But did you guys see A Dog's Purpose?
Mm-mm.
The movie?
Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh, my 12-year-old nieces made fun of me. Not made fun of me, but they were looking at me like something was wrong. They're like, Aunt Brittany, are you okay? Because a dog dies kind of over and over again because he's getting reincarnated is the story. And at the end, it has a happy ending, which of course I was crying then too. But the whole movie, I am ugly crying. And these 12-year-old girls are like, is she okay? I wasn't okay. I was not okay. Do not watch that movie unless...
God damn.
The
Sheena
dogs.
Sheena says
Dogs hit
yes.
you harder.
I'm guessing she saw
knows.
that. Yeah, she saw that.
I
movie.
think that's probably why I enjoyed John Wick, because the dog gets vengeance for 3 movies
I have to
in a
see
row.
that. I haven't seen that yet.
But it's an excuse for Keanu Reeves to just go back to kill a bunch of people, to go back to his assassin roots,
It's Keanu Reeves, basically. Theon Greyjoy from Game of Thrones kills his dog because he's a spoiled brat. Kills Keanu Reeves' dog because he's a spoiled brat. And then Keanu Reeves just spends the entire movie killing people to get to Theon Greyjoy until he can kill Theon Greyjoy.
I think it was justified.
It was.
Yeah. Add murder, add shank a bitch if they hit my cats. Let's be real.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. God, this book was... Shayna says that everyone should watch John Wick. I agree.
Yeah, it should.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
this book was really something else for me. I don't know. I
made myself finish because the author was Trinidadian.
Yeah, but a lot of a lot of work that comes out of Trinidad is literary and not commercial. Not to say that we don't have commercial Trinidadian writers or Trinidadian-born writers. Blood Like Magic, Liselle Sambury, I believe she's Trinidadian descent. I think one of her parents is from Trinidad, if I'm not mistaken. There's also, let's see, there are some other folks. Some of them, I'm thinking of folks who were recently published, but that's probably why their names aren't coming to mind as clearly, because I just discovered them like a couple of weeks ago. But there's some like romance coming out from some Trinidadian writers. I think that's commercial. It's commercial fiction, commercial romance. I know that there are like more fantasy folks coming up. I mean, we are, Talia and I are Trinidadian writers who are, as Talia likes to say, pre-published. It's gonna happen one day. It just ain't happened yet, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So we're pre-published, but there's quite a lot of there's a lot of people who aren't just writing literary, but we have a strong relationship with publishers in the UK. I think the Caribbean in general has a strong relationship with British publication, and the kind of literature that does really well, the kind of writing that does really well in the UK is different. It's different to the kind of writing that does so well in the US. Not to say, I don't know if that necessarily means it's more literary, because I don't know anything about what fiction is like in the UK or what they prefer over like the kind of commercial fiction we get in the US. But I know that that's like a big difference. And so I'm not surprised that the first thing we read by another Trini
is a piece of literary fiction.
Yeah, it's a piece of literary fiction,
Yeah.
right? I think that there's a long tradition of literary fiction here in Trinidad and Tobago, being like almost exclusive for a long time here. And I think even still, a lot of circles will scorn you if you write.
Yeah.
If you don't write literary fiction, if you're a writer, and I use it because that's how they use it, right? If you're a writer and you don't write literary fiction, then what are you writing? You're writing trash. Like, what is this commercial stuff?
Yeah,
Right?
but the trash pays though.
I mean, it ain't paying me yet, so.
I mean, I had a whole tweet about it yesterday, didn't I?
It's true. You did have
had
a tweet about it yesterday.
I had a moment, and I was just like,
It's your friends you make along the way.
yeah.
But I think I think that is true though. Like all of that is only true because of that relationship with what we have chosen to attribute value to, what we have chosen to give value to as a culture, maybe. I don't know. But I don't even think that that's as a culture, because we certainly enjoy commercial work just as much as everybody else. Because we enjoy all of the same things that make us feel human and feel connected to that work. Usually, like Bree mentioned earlier, it's the hero's journey, right? That journey of entering a new and different space, that journey of just moving full circle through all of these changes, resisting and not resisting, making decisions, choosing, right? All of that.
I have a theory about why it does better in Britain, but it just feels kind of mean. It's the exoticization. What are the Caribbean people thinking right now? And it's not
exoticization is for real.
Yeah, versus, okay, these are real people. What are their real stories? And this is why I'm so appreciating the Own Voices movement. And I'm calling it a movement, but this whole Own Voices thing where, what is it like to be a woman of East Indian descent in the West Indies? What is it like to be distinctly Trini versus being Bajan or Jamaican or Antiguan, etc.? And because we're seen as being exotic and not, put on a pedestal for certain things and not being seen as full realized people, certain works which are valid get more press, and they're more likely to be, it's easier to find an avenue for a book to be sold if it's literary fiction in the Caribbean than if you are a fantasy writer, or if you are a romance. I mean, not so much romance. I think I like that romance is pretty, I don't want to say forgiving, but romance tends to do better, right? And like I said, it's not a fully fleshed out theory, but it just feels that way sometimes.
Yeah, I agree with a great deal of this. So I was talking to a bunch of folks. I'm in 2 writing servers. One is ours, and the other one is a Pitch Wars server that was started by one of the Pitch Wars mentors. I am not a Pitch Wars mentee. I just kind of filed my way in and made friends, and they kept me, right? So that's how it went.
Friends we made along the way.
Found family, right? That's how it goes. So I was having a conversation with them because I think aside from the others I had invited in there, which would be like Talia, J.S. Christian, I think Michelle J is there, and Amanda's Bijan. But there's one other person who is not Trinidadian. She's Canadian, but her mother, I think, is Trinidadian, right? So she's born and raised in Canada, but her heritage is drawn to here. So that's the only other Trinidadian person in that server. Everybody else is like me and my friends. So we were having a conversation with all of the non-Trinidadian people on what Caribbean and particularly Trinidadian literature tends to look like. And it's all stuck in the 60s. It's all stuck in the 60s. It's all stuck in a very specific aesthetic for Trinidad and Tobago. It's all stuck in a very specific aesthetic for Caribbeanness or Caribbean life. And something that I think is important, something that my mom mentioned a few days ago talking with another friend, is that it's Caribbean, but it's not West Indian. And the Caribbean is not the same as the West Indies semantically. But also there are two different implications, there are two different meanings, right? Caribbean is the word that we use when we talk about where we're from as tourists. Right, Caribbean is what everybody knows. So the destination, the Caribbean, right? I can't hair flip anymore because I've cut my hair. But you know,
one moment.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Right. So you know, it's this tourist designation, and that's what people know. That's what people understand it as. That's how people engage with this area, this region of the world. And it's not, because if you're West Indian, you're from the exact same region, right? But that has different implications, because West Indian, one, it acknowledges that element of colonialism, right? That was unwanted. It acknowledges the kidnapping and the enslavement that happened on this side of the world here, right? Too. It acknowledges that the West Indies is not actually necessarily like a destination. It's not the same as the Caribbean. And the West Indian implies more than beaches and tourism, because we have economies here that have nothing to do with tourism as well. Like Trinidad's economy was not dependent on. I mean, it has been through some shizzle, but you know, we were an oil-based economy, not a tourism-based economy like some of the other West Indian islands. And I'm saying West Indian islands instead of Caribbean islands because that's what they are too. And what it means to be a West Indian person is different to what it means to be a Caribbean person, even though they are also the same thing. Because when I tell you I'm a Caribbean person, I know that you aren't thinking about what it means to live in a small island developing state, in a third world country, in a place hit by hurricanes, in a place where all you ever see the tweets about what the various Caribbean ministers of state does say to their people? You also the one about how the minister of security in Jamaica talk about how he have an uncle who does do obia, so they set. Yes, but that is the kind of thing. Like that is kind of part of what it means to be West Indian. These are the kind of clowns you have on stage. This is what has happened, and that's not the same as being Caribbean, right? Because like being Caribbean has a lot more of that exoticness to it, and being West Indian is just what you just do in your day-to-day life, dealing with these shit that is every day, right? And I say all of that to say, that all of this comes back to what I was saying about this very specific image of Caribbean life and Caribbean work, Caribbean art. Is that so much of what is celebrated comes from a very specific aesthetic, and that aesthetic is not even modern most of the time.
I kind of blame V.S. Naipaul for that.
Yes, me too. Sorry.
And
Yes.
No, I would have
Get
scared my
passionate.
neighbor. Yeah, because what it was, I think I was either in secondary school or I had just left, right? Whew. The plastic had not yet been peeled off of my adulthood yet. When he went to a secondary school and he was speaking to literature students, V.S. Naipaul is a Nobel Prize.
He went something. He went plenty thing. Me okay. He's a racist soul fool, and I don't like him.
And like so these students are asking him, they're going to be writing exams in a couple months, and they're asking him, about writing, and he said you shouldn't get into writing because it's all been written before.
True, but
he's not
untrue.
the first person. He's also not the first person to say that. This is not a revolutionary statement.
Like I was told that there were only 7 stories, and everything you write is a variation of that
but I think
story.
scammers who tell you that, or V.S. Naipaul tell you that too.
Did it matter? Did it make a difference?
No, it really didn't.
It did not make a difference. And the thing is, the difference was that I was told it doesn't matter, because just because someone else is doing it doesn't mean, because you are a different person to who that is.
Yeah.
And you're going to see things and you're going to have perspectives and you're going to use words differently. Right? And imagine that. Imagine somebody who is, that is what says, okay, well, I can go ahead and do this because I could be just as unoriginal as everybody else and get a piece of the pie, which goes back to my tweet. It's not about, it made no sense getting into writing for the money. It's all about the friends you've made along the way, because it's not made a fucking sense. And but the thing is, it's you and I will see something and we will have the same experience, and we will both talk about it the same exact. We are not going to talk about it the same exact way, but then we're going to have 2 different experiences and we're going to talk about it the same exact way, which is why Kay refers to my human children as cats. How are your human cats? And I will ask her, how are your feline children? Because we have 2 different experiences.
You have 2 different experiences, but they translate to a similar experience, like a similar experience of humanity, right?
Yeah,
that's what's going to make for something. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's what's going to make that's what's going to make your books hit. That's what's going to make people want to buy them, read them, right? Because they can relate to them. Like, yes, we've all heard, the hero's journey or the romance or the buddy novel or the creature feature. They've all been told before, but it's your experience, your flavor. Enough to make it familiar that they're going to enjoy it, but enough different that it's new. You need the familiar. You need to have tropes. Are not always a bad thing. Tropes are what people look for to hook them.
Exactly. Like the found family, like enemies to lovers, like
yeah.
You're like, oh, I know I like this, so I'm going to like this book.
Right?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to, and I'm going to tie the book back into this, because that was Atticus's problem. Right? He didn't come from, when they were granted human consciousness, he was not party to centuries of human social conditioning. And he was very, very afraid of the new and the unfamiliar. Right? And because he was afraid, he went back to what he knew, and he found that he literally could not go home again. And this is why I wish that Atticus could have had a better redemption. Right? Like, I wished more for him, as I do of men who uphold the patriarchy while still being abused by it. But it boils down to, you have something that is the familiar, which was the old language, which he wanted. It's the devil. Exactly. That's it. It was the devil he knew. And I feel genuinely that he genuinely thought he was doing something for his pack, not realizing that this new thing that has been added to them has changed them in fundamental ways in which the old ways couldn't work.
Even that is a trope, because how many books have we read or will we read in the future where there is inevitably somebody who knows better but doesn't know how to make better, right? Leading a group. They're like, I don't know any other way. I don't know
Right.
any other way of living. I don't have the tools to adapt to a new way of living.
Mhm.
I don't know if you have the tools to adapt to a new way of living, but you know what? You don't have the tools to lead. I'm the only one with the tools to lead. I'm the only one who's capable of keeping you all together. And I know how to get from now. I know how to keep surviving. I know how to keep surviving, and it's by doing it the old way. I don't know how to survive with the new way. And it's been demonstrated already that the new way is making us a threat to others like us or who used to be like us. Because other dogs were immediately like in the presence of those change, the other dogs immediately knew that they were different and attacked them.
Yeah.
Right? Often attack them. Some I think were submissive or like just kind of I don't know what's going on there, but they were dogs who attacked them. And in the face of that kind of adversity, where you're like, the only way I know is the old way. The only thing that I that's the only familiarity I have, and I want to hold on to that. That's a really messed up situation, and I think it's one of the reasons because we often see leaders like that in the books that we read, and they are the ones who are going to be overthrown by somebody who knows how to accept and integrate with the new, somebody who knows how to assimilate, right?
Ray
And
Bear.
What's that?
I said Ray Bear.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
Ray Bear is a great
Like-
example of that.
Like I saw Athena and Bella, they had like this closeness, and I've been reading a whole mess of things that have been messing with my mind, and they were talking about how gossip has been vilified when that was because men did not understand
That was a
women's
TikTok, wasn't it?
friendship. No.
Wasn't it a TikTok? There was a TikTok about gossip. And
Yes, it was. But I read an article as well, so I felt like
Okay.
if I said I read an article, I'd look smarter.
Listen, as long
Don't give up your secret.
as listen,
It's like, darling,
I think
I was listening to this
that TikTok
one
is a
podcast. It's a golden. I love it. And like I was telling some. Let me get back to what I was saying. Right. So they were like these feminists. Athena was named after a particular goddess, and she and our Athena in this book, she and Bella, they had this beautiful friendship, this beautiful symbiosis that the other dogs resented, and I feel that like I like women would say things like, I'm not like other women. And the thing is, it's not like we're not like other women. We don't want to be treated the way our male counterparts treat other women.
which
Right.
is a
It
much
took
more
me a
accurate
long
statement, right? It's not that I am not like other women. It's that I don't want you to treat me like you treat other women.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we're signaling, listen, I'm not like other women, right? As in, I'm not going to respond the same way because I'm not going to like it. As if we think that that other women enjoy oppression. And there are some women that like being naturally submissive. And I'm like, I support your right to want to submit. I support your right to do what you want to do with your life. But so anyway, so the dogs attacking them. It was like, oh my God, this is like the Salem witch trials all over again. Because who were the witches? They were the ones that would brew potions, but these were like herbal remedies and so on. And you talk to a modern witch today, and you could talk to them, and they will tell you, like, one of my
Witches were just
favorite.
women who held a power that men could not usurp.
Right. And
Yeah.
they were the ones that were the midwives. Midwifery took a huge hit during the witch burnings. A lot of science, a lot of herbal knowledge was lost during that time. And like there's a reclamation now that is going on, and I'm hearing a lot of women calling themselves witches, and they wouldn't tell me, well, you do this for this, you take this herb and it's gonna be good for your depression, it's gonna be good for your anxiety, it's gonna help you with your cough. And it's so prevalent now because nobody experiments on pregnant women to find out, well, okay, what medicines are good for you when you're pregnant, what can you take when you're breastfeeding, right? So we can't take over-the-counter medications, we can't get prescription drugs because I'm going to prescribe you nothing but Panadol for that severe chest pain you have, right? And That's what the doctors told me, and they said, no, that's your asthma. Just take your puff. And it turned out that I had a very severe infection in my not an infection, but I had fluid collecting in my heart. And do you know what? And I was talking to my to my friend, and she said, "Oh, you didn't take the haldi." I was like, "What?" She said, "Yeah, that's what the turmeric and the milk and the golden latte dotishness, the golden milk that is sold in Starbucks now. That's for it. It prevents inflammation." And I'm like, this was so mind blowing to me that this is information that we have, that somebody has, that I could have used. Now, I was given medication, and of course, I survived that pregnancy. But it goes back to the attack on what it means to be what we. It's just that women build certain things for themselves, and they're torn down because they're women. None of the other dogs had that kind of friendship. Not even Frick and Frack.
I mean, frickin' Frack didn't even have, like, we shared a single brain cell, so.
This is the final brain cell. Sorry. If that is made into a movie, I want Frick and Frack's theme song to be Final Brain Cell.
Anyway, but continue what you were telling about Athena and Belle.
I'm talking too much, but it felt like the vilification of female friendships that we see in among our male counterparts, and
they justified it with the safety of the group and calling attention. But they could have stayed home. They could have kept them at home. They didn't have to kill them.
Yeah, or they could have just expunged them, like actually exiled, instead of
go be friends somewhere else.
Yeah,
exile them from the pack, not from existence.
and that's
who
something,
gets to have that right.
Exactly, but I think that comparison to witch trials is really apt in that way, because when a woman has some kind of power or is capable of doing something that a man isn't, is often when you get those kinds of situations, right? And remember that Athena was a tiny dog, but Belle was a Great Dane.
Yeah.
That was the only, she wasn't interested in usurping Atticus's power or, taking the lead or anything like that in any way. But they knew that she, because of her size and her breed, they knew she was powerful. And
and you saw it. They couldn't even take her out. They used a car.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They had to trick her. And even that act of strategizing in the way they did, which was so undog-like, it's something that they could not face. They could not face their own undogness. Feelings. I don't know. Yeah, it's like I was gonna say they couldn't face their own like humanity because they were acting like humans, like conniving, because they're the conspirators.
You know what it is? They felt shame, and dogs don't feel shame, and that was one of the human characteristics that was given to them. And they mentioned it even. There was a point, I think Atticus, when he started feeling sexual. So this goes all the way towards, sexual repression in, maybe conservative families or in conservative cultures. He started feeling certain things that dogs don't feel, and he questioned it and he felt shame. And actually that was a point that I noted because, shame is one of those things that drives people to do terrible things.
Shame and fear.
Because they can't process it. it. So.
Yeah. Yep. Shame and fear. That was something else that I saw a lot here in the dogs and in the pack is fear. Fear drove a lot of those decisions. And fear of the new, right? Fear of this new language, fear of these new capabilities, fear of this understanding, fear of all, all of those things. Whew. It was a lot.
Gut punch.
Yeah, that book was a little bit exhausting, as literary fiction often is.
I'm kind of glad I read it.
Still,
I'm kind of glad I read it because it was a very uncomfortable read, but it kind of like Atticus rationalizing a lot of the murders, and he's like, well, it wasn't me. It was their bloodlusts. Like he had his whole not all men moment.
He did though. Gosh, I forgot about that.
I
There was a
remember
lot.
why we were talking.
There was
I
a lot of
remember why
toxic masculinity, especially like as you keep pointing out all of these things. Like there was a lot of toxic masculinity involved. But again, I think it's because we're looking at a book that pulls on our patriarchy, right? And that
Yeah.
uses the dog's apparent patriarchal system to justify some of these things too. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, when they were when you're seeing the other dogs in the park, and they're not really like that, and they're dogs, and there were other feral dogs as well
Hmm.
that, and I didn't observe them having that desperate need for hierarchy. And it was them, needing to feel a certain measure of control over their lives, which is a very, very human thing to do, right? And so,
Which is the point.
which was the point. And it goes back to our modern society and this concept of the alpha, which comes from the alpha wolf, which has turned out to be debunked, but they're holding on to it. And I was having a conversation with Miguel some time ago, and this was during the worst of my postpartum depression. And I said, well, I hate that men don't go through this. I hate that men don't have it. And he says, no, I have this anxiety. And I said, what do you mean? He says, when you think I make a decision, right, I am always scared that I get it wrong. Even if he's the one that has the final say in whatever, for whatever reason, because of how we set our marriage up, and even if he's the one making the final decision because he's the one with the expertise in the area, he's afraid of messing it up. And it's like, but if you mess up, what's the worst that could happen? But we can fix it this way and we can fix it that way. He said, yes, but this is who I am.
Yeah.
And this is the anxiety that I face. And I'm like, okay, but Miguel, but like I could have picked up the phone. I could have called Candace. I could have called any one of my friends, any one of my girlfriends. I could have called anyone to be the Bella to my Athena. Right? And I know this. I have the resources. I have the internet. I can join any group and be seen and be heard and be respected and get the advice and so on that I need. But where is it for Miguel? Where is that for men? Where they can discuss fatherhood. Like I found the site Fatherly, and I went and I was so excited and I was going to tell them all about it, and they were female writers. And as much as I think that men can learn a lot from women, they also need their space to be men. Right? And not to be men in a toxic manner, but to be men in a comforting and nurturing manner.
To be human.
To be themselves.
To be human. Yeah. To allow. Yeah. But that comes back to the traits of toxic masculinity, where men aren't allowed to be a human and to have those emotions and to engage with each other or to bring comfort to each other. Right. In that way. And I think that's really true. I think that it's a tough world for men to seek comfort as human beings who have emotions, simply because toxic masculinity and the patriarchy exists and it's not celebrated, it's not accepted. Right. It's how you end up with people like dogs like Atticus and Frick and Frack. Right.
And men like Piers Morgan. Why can't he enjoy this moment with his own child? This is
so ingrained.
Yeah.
It's so ingrained because they did a study where they gave somebody a child and they told it the gender, regardless of what the gender actually was. And the people talked to the babies differently based on what they were told it was. So it didn't matter what gender it actually was. If they're told they're holding a boy, they're talking to a boy differently than if they're talking to a girl. And so it's systemic in society. And I agree. I don't agree with it. I think men should have a space to discuss emotions in a safe environment the way that we do with each other. Because in fact, a lot of the sometimes where I bump heads with guys or partners or relationships is in needs for attention and needs for communication, because us as women, when we get together, we communicate, we have sleepovers, we talk on FaceTime, we're very much vocal and we talk about our feelings and our experiences. Men tend to, and if I'm overgeneralizing, please somebody correct me, but men tend to get together and do things. They hang out, they go to the bar, they go shoot golf, they do things like that. So their interactions with each other are more activity-based than emotion-based. And so when men and women come together in relationships where a woman wants to be more emotional and a man typically isn't, it's because, again, the way men interact and women interact, and it's just systemic.
Yeah, we're socialized differently.
And not just that, like
we're socialized differently.
Even sometimes a man will be like, maybe I can be vulnerable with this woman, and he tries, and she is uncomfortable because she is raised to think that men are not like
Alpha.
this. Men are, and I think that the toxic masculinity has screwed men over so badly, so terribly.
It's screwed them to the point where most of them don't even realize that it's screwed them.
Yeah.
And that's
Like
the thing that really is upsetting.
Trigger warning, child molestation. There was a 15-year-old boy that was molested by an adult woman. And in the comments, there was this man saying, "What, boy? You get through. Because it's you get through. You live in my fantasy, but she ain't gonna get the kind of she's not gonna get the kind of sentence a man, if it was a man interfere with a little girl." And it's like, because the people who wrote the laws think that it's a fantasy. So you're mad at a woman benefiting because you're living your fantasy. And it's like, no, this boy was, so this
boy was raped. This child was raped.
This child was raped, whether he wanted it or not. He is 15. He cannot give legal consent because he is not. He doesn't have the autonomy of an adult. Should something, because sex is messy. Sex is very, very messy, and I see that the man, like, he was so close and got so far,
Yeah.
And in the end, it didn't even matter. And
why are you doing this? Okay. No, you and your Lincoln Park quotations. So Brendan mentions about the conversation we were having earlier around how men and women are socialized differently, girls and boys are socialized differently, and how we engage with each other and others of our presenting gender, or in different ways. And he says that yes, a lot of that is true, and it turns into a cycle where women are expected to do emotional labor, or men repress their emotions in relationships instead. And yeah, I think that's really tragic. I think that's really tragic. And Brendan and I occasionally have this argument where I'm like, why aren't you telling me things about how you feel? Tell me the things that you feel.
It's okay. Like, I'm telling you, it's okay.
Yeah. And I think, for the most part, we've always been really good at sharing with each other, but even that still, we still end up in those moments where it's like I communicate in one way and he communicates or fails to communicate in another way. And I too will fail to communicate in certain ways. And all of that is just kind of how we've been programmed, and we're trying to deprogram ourselves, but it's hard to do when you're adult and there's only, like Atticus, you've only known one way. You've only known one way, just like Atticus has only known one way as a dog. He's afraid to engage with the new, to embrace it, to see what it means to have more words or new words, to see what it means, all of those things. And it's the best. Sorry. I've not just feel like if anybody is curious about why I've been yawning and all of this, it's honestly just because I have not been sleeping well for like the last 2 weeks. Why I've not been sleeping well for the last 2 weeks, I don't know. It could be my chronic pain problems. It could be my anxiety. It could be other things. Who knows? I just know that I ain't sleeping. So I apologize, y'all.
No, I've been going through similar, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
I saw it and like I keep seeing these TikToks. Gender is a performance, and you see somebody, you know, come out and they show off what they're wearing, and it might be it really doesn't matter what they're all very, very beautiful, and I love the concept of genders being a performance. And there's some of us, it's like, we're phoning it in. This is not the best performance of our lives. We're just here for the paycheck and go. Which is why I wear lipstick and glasses, so that you can't see how I refuse to learn how to do my eyeliner. The one time I did it, I messed up my mascara, right? So I am like a B-movie actress in terms of gender performance. I give it my all, but I'm never going to be at Cannes Film Festival. I'm like direct-to-TV type gender performance actress.
That's funny. Yeah, I see it. I think gender might be primarily a performance, but I also feel like it's more than that. Gender is a programming. Because even when we are aware of the performativeness of it, we're engaging in a script. We're engaging in a script that has already that has been predetermined. The script that we've been memorizing since we were children. Yeah, and this book highlights that, and I think I don't think it was intentional. I don't think that it was intentional the way this. There were other things that I think definitely were. I think that the commentary on hierarchy. I think the commentary on how intelligence just makes you miserable. I think the commentary on how humanity is miserable. I think the commentary on the way we embrace the new or reject the new, and how we are driven by fear and often driven by shame. I think all of that is a fairly intentional commentary, but I do not think that the commentary on how toxic it is or how toxically men behave was intentional. But it was very clear in this book. That was very clear in this book if you give it enough thought. Yeah, Brie?
Yeah.
I think because it was basically a painting of humanity as a whole. Yeah. Because of that, there were the intentional parts, but I think it's very easy then to draw the unintentional parts because it was a painting of humanity.
Yes,
so we're able to say, well, we as women are identified with this toxic masculinity because we've lived it, So I think that is a testament, and that's a compliment to the author, that she made a book that she was able to give her story, but that we're still able, and that's literary fiction, right? But we're finding our own stories within it.
Is Andre Alexis used this to live? I thought it was he. Hold on, I gotta look it up now.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I don't.
I'm just looking it up because now
it's a male author. My bad.
The Wikipedia page uses he, and Caribbean Beat magazine. Caribbean Beat also uses he. Okay, so we'll stick with he, because I don't see anything where the author is directly like these are my pronouns. So we'll err on that
until side. we learn. Otherwise,
So okay, let's. I feel like we aren't as energetic about this as we have been with some of the others, I think. But I do also feel like part of that is that there was a lot of the woman or the female power in this was removed, and removed quickly and early. Yeah, because the only I think female presence after Athena and Belle died were Rosie and Nera. Nera being the human, Rosie being another dog. And so those were the only places where we, for the majority of the book, would have the opportunity to connect. And because we're viewing Nera, I don't think we really got Rosie's perspective. Like, we didn't really get a lot of Rosie's perspective, if any, did we?
No.
She was more of a tool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. She spoke. She engaged with Benjy and stuff, but I don't think that we really had her perspective the way we had Majnoun's perspective, and we certainly didn't really engage with Nera's perspective in that way either. because it was all directly through Majnoun as a lens.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like perhaps that is why we connected. We identified with a lot of things in this book, like we identified with a lot of experiences, but I don't know that we connected with it the way we connected with some of the experiences in The Marrow Thieves and in Rhaenyra. That's what I think. I don't know. What do you think?
It had a very omniscient, it was definitely an omniscient narrator. So it felt like we were kind of floating and just watching everything unfold. So in that respect, absolutely, I felt like I was being told a story, not that I was feeling a story, or, like, for example, Tari Sai, we like felt like we were in her body, her eyes, like we were writing her story in her story. This felt like I was being told a story. I was sitting in a movie theater watching these dogs go through these terrible lives. So yeah, it felt differently.
Yeah. What about you, Talia? What do you think?
I felt it, and I think that was kind of deliberate, because as women, we tell stories differently to the way men tell stories. Men tell stories. We share stories, and it's not a knock on men. It's who they are. It's what makes them them. But it was something I didn't like in this, and again, I said, okay, that is a me problem, because he is engaging in a very specific genre. He is writing in a very specific style, and it was very deliberately done. And just because I didn't like it is not a knock on how beautifully he did it. Like Athena and Bella's death served a purpose. It was a deliberate removal of feminine power.
Yeah.
It was deliberate, right? And that happens. That has happened. It has happened to us. And we can all tell stories about it, which we won't do. But because we're not talking about our stories, we're talking about, hi, Mushy. But it was a deliberate. it was deliberately done. And Rosie falling into line and doing what was expected of her. She had her contributions exalted while also being erased at the same time. And I felt like I want to give props to Andre Alexis, because that was very beautifully well done. It was yes, a patriarchal view of society as it is, and it showed how women are viewed by people who buy into the patriarchy, because there are women that buy into the patriarchy all the time.
Oh yeah.
Right? And they're the ones that uphold like, hey, she's fine with it, why aren't you? I was like, I'm fine with her being fine with it. I'm just not fine with her being my mouthpiece. And
Mrs. Waterford.
Yeah, exactly. And that was that. And one thing that I kind of disagreed with was that intelligence makes us miserable. Oh my God, I forgot. Prince coming to the end. He found joy. He found joy in his poetry because there was an outlet for it. And he found joy when he was sharing, I forgot her name, but when he shared his poem with his human. He found joy. He found freedom because he was able to get his vision of freedom. He could come and go as he pleased. There were people that appreciated him for who he was. They kind of left him alone, and that was fine with him. And for a lot of introverts, that's what they want. And that was like the ideal life for an introvert, and he was able to get that life, and he had his intelligence. He had that outlet. So he didn't get gifted kid burnout basically to the end there. So he wasn't miserable.
Like the rest of us.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of agree I disagree with. So I agree with the ignorance is bliss part of the story. I think that to go against, I think that that's it illustrated that very well. So when you're aware and you realize you are different and you have this awareness of your difference, that's where the misery came from. And then the happiness came at the end when he had that shared understanding, when she repeated his barks to him. She didn't know what the hell she was saying, but he's like, oh my God, she understands my poetry. It's going to live on, at least through one more person. And that shared experience, that shared understanding is what brought happiness. But I think the awareness brought depression and just because, again, you have this realization that you're different, you're alone, nobody's going to understand you. And so it's that negative self-talk that, worked against happiness. So there was, even that on a different level, but.
Yeah. I'm gonna, since it's been almost 2 hours and it's coming up on 5 o'clock here. I'm gonna say let's do final thoughts. Unless those were final thoughts, I guess. I don't know.
Those were kind of final.
Yeah. I guess I can go first and you guys hop in. I think that saying I enjoyed this book would be a lie. But saying I understand this book and I appreciate the message that this book had, and I appreciate what this book was trying to tell me and what this book was trying to express, that is true. It's definitely not the thing I would read on a regular basis. I'm not really into literary fiction because I don't like to be confronted with my shitty reality, which literary fiction often does. But I am glad that Kirsten chose this book, if only to give us something different, to give us something different to read and different to think about. And it's really telling for me, I think, about what I love and what I enjoy, what I engage with, that, Natalia mentioned really clearly that feminine power was destroyed at the earliest possible times, except for the one dog. I was going to say prison, but I mean, it's 15 dogs. The one dog that was okay, that was supportive of the hierarchy, right? And that removal for me, I do think, because I agree that the understood perspective definitely gives you distance between what's happening on the page and what's happening as far as connectivity to the reader. I definitely think that that's true. But I've also certainly read third person, like omniscient POVs that keep pulling me in and bring me close, still make me feel close to the characters. And it's not to say that I don't think I felt close to any of the characters, but I think that element where I always see myself was missing. I couldn't find something in this book where I really saw myself outside of, I have experienced some of these things, but none of these things help me or define me in any way. None of these experiences that I'm seeing on this page are things that I choose to identify with as how I engage with the world. Whereas, with Tarise in Rape Era, and even Frenchie in the Marrow Thieves, there were bits and pieces of humanity and of action where I could say, this is me. This is me. This is something I relate to deeply, right? I appreciate the experiences from and I want to make it clear that I don't think my reason for not connecting is because these characters were dogs, because these characters might as well have been people. That's just a fact, right? But I just think that having not just women, I suppose, but any characters who engage with the world the way I did, or like experienced the world in ways where it gave them the opportunity to make decisions that I would make, I think that is what really made me step back from it. But I appreciate what this book wanted to do and was doing. I just didn't get into it. That's it. Those are my final thoughts. Yeah. You guys want to add anything?
I guess I'm glad I read it on audiobook because it allowed me to do things with my hands while I'm being punched in the gut. I agree with Kier. It's not a book that I would have chosen. It's not a book I would have necessarily stuck with outside of book club.
Same.
But that's not to say that I don't appreciate it. And I actually appreciate that I read this now instead of in high school. Because if I read this in high school, I would have been like, it's an assignment. I don't want to do it. Why do I care about dogs? Yeah. But reading it as an adult, I'm able to take it for what it is, a piece of literary fiction. I'm kind of looking down from the moon onto the earth. And I saw this story and I listened to this story and I appreciate what the author illustrated for us? Was it a very character driven, like you're following one character throughout? No, it was pretty disjointed. You're following this group, then we're going to jump here. Now we're going to go back in time. So there was a lot of hopscotching. But I think my final thought is just it was a very, we're talking about animals, but it was very much a picture of, I think, today and humanity. And
like most
I appreciated it. Yeah, and so I appreciated the book, and I'm glad we were able to discuss it.
Yeah. Talia, any other last thoughts you want to throw away before we wrap up?
I was joking with Miguel that I'm glad I read it because I feel like I feel like superior because I read it and somebody else didn't, and it was a joke. It was a joke. I have other reasons for feeling superior. Reading the book was not one of them, but there were things I couldn't connect with emotionally, but I could connect with it technically. That even though it was disjointed, I could still follow the stories. And from a technical perspective, this was a work of art. From knowing what art is supposed to disturb you and make you think, this was a work of art. And was it a reflection of society? It was. It was. And it did what it was supposed to do, and I'm actually glad I read it, even though I didn't like it. And like I said, I could appreciate not liking the book, and it wasn't the author's fault. It wasn't my fault. It just wasn't. It wasn't. I felt like this book was not written for me. Like when he was figuring out, okay, well, who's the demographic I'm looking for? Not Talia, you know. And that's fair. There's not everything is going to be for me to consume.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, but I'm able to see what is other to me. It's not it's not relatable, but it was other, and I was able to see the other the way he sees himself. So it's relatable to him, but I was able to connect with him and how he sees himself, more or less. You know what I mean? So I'll still give it a 4 out of 5 because it was a work of technical mastery. Did it connect?
Beautifully written.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
It was poetry.
Would I try something else of his? Probably because I'm a masochist.
I'm like,
yeah, no, Ken knows why I'm saying that. But I think that I would just like not so much to read what he is writing because I want to connect with the material, but because I want to connect with him as a writer. I want to see what his next book looks like. You know what I mean?
That's fair. Yeah, I think that I would be interested in seeing what his next book is like.
I want to see his growth because I have friends who write romance. I don't like romance, but I'll read it because I want to see how my friend thinks. I want to connect with my friend, the writer, not necessarily the material. And I would love to connect with him. And I want to go along on his journey. I want to see what he does next.
That's fair. I don't think that I would pick up one of his other books because I want to read that book, but I would be interested. And there's no promises that I would finish it. But I would be interested to know what his next book is. And at that point, I would be like, maybe I will read it. Maybe I won't. Let's see. Anyway.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you both. Thank you to Gabriella and Shayna. And thank you to Kirsten for recommending this book. Hopefully, you have a fuller house when it's not Mother's Day. More of us will be around to be present. Not this coming Sunday, but the following Sunday. We do this every 2 weeks. We'll be reading, I believe it's The Space Between Worlds.
Yeah, I love that
Space Between Worlds.
I got it right here.
This is Bree's pick. It's science fiction. It came out last year in August. And it's by, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name correctly. Is it Micaiah Johnson?
I'll double check, but that's what I would assume.
Okay.
It looks like it.
So, yes, The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. And I'm very excited to read it because I think this is the first sci-fi pick. Well, no, technically, Marrow Thieves maybe was considered science. I think it was considered dystopian science fiction.
We'll see, because I read a review on this one, and it said that it might be kind of a little bit like Marrow Thieves in that it's sci-fi, but I think it's also character driven. So we'll see.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks to everyone who was watching. I know that a lot of folks jumped in and jumped out, and then jumped back in. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this conversation. And I'm looking forward to reading The Space Between Worlds and talking to everybody in 2 weeks. So, ta-ta, folks.
Bye. Look forward to seeing you guys in a couple weeks too, man. Take care.
See ya.